Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome back to another edition of the FunBelt PodCast. With me, as always, is Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report, and Ben Moore from Panther Talk is with us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about hoops, and then Dusty is going to tell us what else the hell we're going to talk about. Dusty, what the hell else do we have to talk about?
Free flow, man. Just going with the flow and seeing where it takes us. No, college football news back in the spotlight as spring football gets ready to kick off. College football's Bill Conley released his top returning production. So we will break down the Sun Belt Conference, what's coming in from the newcomers, as well as what is returning. And guys, it doesn't look so good there for the storied Coastal Carolina coming back with just 36% returning. But we'll break that down later on.
Well, I'm sure that some people within the Sun Belt will find that to be very good news indeed.
The rest of the time, guys, it's March Madness, and we kick it off, of course, with Ben's Panthers in the NCAA tournament. Ben, that really came down to it sounds easier said than done, but when you give up a 21-0 run, you're going to lose by 21 points, usually every single time.
Yeah, you know, the game plan, and honestly, when the draw was announced on Sunday night, there was a lot of buzz, especially in Atlanta, because the hope, certainly from a proximity point of view, was to have the Panthers land in Greenville, South Carolina, which would be an easy 2-hour drive, and a lot of the Panther faithful could get up there, similar how they went in Chattanooga, or in Nashville a few years ago against Cincinnati, and Jacksonville, of course, against Baylor in the upset. Of course, the RJ Hunter shot there. Sending the Panthers out to Portland, no big deal, just playing the top overall seed in the Gonzaga Bulldogs, who, oh, by the way, may or may not have the top overall pick in the NBA draft, and Chet Holmgren. And, I was impressed with Timmy as well, their other power forward. He just absolutely dominated. The Panthers' story of the whole season has kind of been injuries and COVID hiccups and things like that. But getting to the NCAA tournament was obviously a huge step in the right direction for Rob Lanier and this staff. But losing Eliel Sasemi with only 6.5 minutes basically left to go in the first half, I got text messages already from that point. It was, okay, it's over. He's our 6'8" inside presence against already the size, and the Panthers got just waylaid inside, as good coaches do. They're going to go and make adjustments at half. But was proud of the Panthers' effort. There's obviously a lot to build on there. But there's a tremendous amount leaving. There's 4 seniors leaving off this team that have won a lot, including all Sun Belt guards, Kane Williams and Corey Allen. So will be an interesting offseason. I've already seen some nuggets and notes already. The Panthers plan to hit the transfer portal very, very hard. So look to see them obviously reload in the next. But it was good to get back to the NCAA tournament for a fourth time in the last 7 seasons, and definitely some optimism opening up a new arena here this season in Atlanta. So it should be pretty fun.
Jeremy, did you get a chance to watch that game at all and kind of give us your thoughts of what the Golden Panthers? They're not the Golden Children, they're the Golden Panthers.
I did see a little bit of the game. I was actually on a golf course in Mississippi for a lot of that. Was very surprised to see how close it was, especially in the first half going into the second half. And I kind of looked at Georgia, and I can be completely wrong about this. If you guys want to lambaste me for this, I will accept your lambasting, especially from you, Ben Moore, because the Panthers are your team. But it seems to me like the Panthers were a little bit like the Memphis Tigers to me, kind of cut from that same cloth, kind of fast and athletic, and sort of maybe that took Gonzaga by surprise a little bit, because Gonzaga kind of plays their own kind of big man game, and here we are. We've got these guys from Atlanta coming in. Didn't give them much of a chance. Saw plenty of Gonzaga analysis heading into the tournament, where the Panthers weren't even mentioned. Well, they're being mentioned now. And of all the things that happened with these postseason tournaments, the Panther performance, even in a loss, probably was a really good thing to have happen for the Sun Belt. So congratulations, Fenmore. I'm sure that Coach Lanier was fielding your phone calls, probably to try and pick your mind for advice.
He doesn't need my advice. He's good to go there. And you know, as we know, in Georgia State land, everyone wants to compare everything to obviously when Ron Hunter was here, and in year 3, you know, Ron took the Panthers to the NCAA tournament, and so Lanier has done the same. And their winning percentage so far, even with the cancellations over the last 2 seasons, losing 14 games, is nearly the same. So interested to see what Coach Lanier builds for year 4. But I agree with you. I mean, your overall sentiment is correct. You know, both Memphis and Georgia State like to junk it up defensively. They really want to overplay the passing lanes. Gonzaga wants to play really, really, really fast. They're one of the top pace teams in the nation. You know, ended up being a bad matchup. And quite honestly, Memphis, I think, took some of the game plan from Georgia State on Thursday night, really got after them early, were roughing up the big men inside and pushing the guards out. And you know, I watched a good amount of that game yesterday, and Memphis absolutely had an opportunity to beat them, which would have been another number 1 seed gone. But alas, Gonzaga does what Gonzaga does, and they were on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed about Memphis and Georgia State was that the trajectory they got into the tournament were similar to, you know, which Memphis just could not figure it out in most of the regular season, had a lot of troubles, came into their tournament hot. They didn't end up winning their tournament. They ended up coming in second, but they came in sizzling hot. And I felt like Georgia State was the same way, just kind of floundered for so much of the season, couldn't find their identity, couldn't get healthy. The COVID would screw a lot of things up. Didn't even really know who the Panthers were until the last quarter of the season. And then it was like, okay, these are the Panthers that were predicted to win the Sun Belt. And lo and behold, they won the Sun Belt. How good are the prognosticators, Dusty Thibodeaux? They said Georgia State and Louisiana. And in the end, what was it?
Panthers and Cajuns.
It was. So why do we even watch the games? The prognosticators even know what's going to happen.
I just want to know, if you were in a golf course in Mississippi, chances are that was at a place where they had sports book. So I'm wondering if you didn't parlay against the Panthers.
I did not. You know, my son, he is more of a gambler than I am, and he was really looking hard at that Georgia State spread with Gonzaga, and he almost went ahead and took the points. It was like, it's so close, and I believe Georgia State beat the spread.
Backdoor cover. Yeah, the free throws by one Evan Johnson got a backdoor cover, and it was too funny too, because he was fouled on a 3-point attempt that went in, and he missed the free throw. And I tweeted out at the time, there's a whole lot of folks interested in what happens in the next 35, 40 seconds. And if he can hit this free throw, it's going to be if you took the Panthers and the points, you got the win.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, that was a good, listen, let's face it, losing by 20 is not a good outcome. But if you have to lose by 20, the Panthers really did show a lot of fight and a lot of spirit, and maybe a little bit of future of the Sun Belt. But maybe what we should really be focusing on was that North Texas State game. I did see a lot of that.
That was a pretty good game. I thought that the Bobcats just dug themselves too much of a hole early on and just unable to really shoot their way out of the hole.
Thibodeaux, I have never been more confident in a team winning with 1 minute left than I was with Texas State. I had already taken out the permanent marker and scratched in Texas State for round 2. There was no way they were going to lose that game. And it was like they just couldn't stop fouling. They couldn't stop not rebounding. I mean, there was one point where they did that rebound where there's 3 guys underneath the basket and all 3 Texas Bobcats touch it and it just dribbles out of bounds. How? How does that happen with a minute left?
Bobcat.
Oh man, I felt so bad, and then I was like, okay. And here's what makes it feel bad for me personally is that North Texas is coached by Grant McCaslin, great coach, has a great pedigree. I think he's 5'2". He's just knows what he's doing, but he coached Arkansas State for a year, delivered one of our finer seasons in a long time, and then bailed on us. So I wanted to see him suffer by the hands of the Sun Belt. I wanted to see him beneath the Bobcats' paws, begging for mercy. And I don't get that. I don't get to have that.
The power of the Super Pit. There's something about North Texas home court there at the Super Pit where even when they are dead, they come alive and are able to capture the win. We saw it time and time again when they were in the league, and every team that we had would go there, have the mean green backs against the wall, and Johnny Jones and company would just come out swinging.
Give credit to Texas or North Texas, but also just, I don't know, apply as much shame as we can to the Boomcats right now. They had that game. They had it won. And they just let victory seep through their hands. It was just hard to watch. I was more honestly, Ben, I was more depressed about what happened with Texas State than I was with what happened to the Panthers. So
as you probably should be, and think about the Texas State faithful. So you are the regular season champs for the second straight season. Open up Sun Belt tournament play in Pensacola. Get beat by Louisiana. Go to a postseason tournament and you lose again. So they definitely looked interested. It's not one of those where we hear the argument, right, where hey, it's a bowl game or a postseason attempt, so we're just going to kind of go through the motions. They were in the game and they'd obviously fought back and clawed to get into overtime, but just a tough result there, and nobody wants to lose two straight to certainly end their season.
No. So do we want to talk a little bit about the future of the Sun Belt basketball? Or wait, Dusty, I know you want to talk about these other tournaments. Let's do it.
The basketball classic is still going on.
3 Sun Belt teams, right?
There's 2 Fun Belt teams left.
But
South Alabama and Coastal Carolina are still playing in the basketball classic. South Alabama, they beat Southeastern Louisiana by 2 points. They should have beat them by many, many, many more, but they packed it up at around the 15-minute mark of the second half and coasted into that nail-biting victory.
Nearly packed themselves out of the tournament.
They almost coasted right on out of the tournament. They'll now play USC Upstate, that game tipping off here shortly Sunday night, just like Dunk City taking on the Till of Coastal Carolina.
Ooh, that's a good game. But you know what? You mentioned USC
Upstate girl,
USC
College.
Upstate.
Slightly different there, yeah.
My bad. But what happened? What? Why are they so? What's the story behind that team? Why should that team make me angry?
They ended App State season.
Exactly. What the hell, App State?
And by a point guard by the name of Dalvin White. And if you remember, some of you old school Sun Belt guys, he is the younger brother of Georgia State former guard Devontae White, who was a problem back with the Panthers in the early Ron Hunter days. So good to see little D White, as we call him around here, put the dagger in the App State Mountaineers.
Yeah, you gotta wonder what the Mountaineers think about that, because kind of like Texas State, they were the defending Sun Belt champion, did not do particularly well in the Sun Belt tournament, didn't finish the season very strong, but still very, had a great season, has that coach that's firing on all cylinders, has Delph there, who's just a superstar. How do you get beat by USC Upstate?
And beat on your home court at that, which we all know going up there for the 3,300 altitude or whatever they advertise it as, it's a tough place to play.
It's hard to win unless you're a Mountaineer. how did this get through their fingers? But at least we still have two teams playing, and maybe we can get some glory out of that.
And then we actually have a third still in the CBI that tips off. Troy travels to Abilene Christian to tip off that. I like that matchup. I think that's going to be a good, high-scoring, fast-paced game. I don't know which way it's going to go. Obviously, I would love for the Troy Trojans, Scott Cross, to be able to get that win, but not sure how exactly that game's going to turn out. Definitely something you want to be able to check out, though.
Let me ask you.
Cross back in his native state, back into Texas.
He is.
Yes. But listen, Ben, do we really need a stronger, more confident Scott Cross to wreak havoc across the Sun Belt for next year? Do we need that? Do we need that in our lives? Wouldn't we rather have a humble, sort of chastised Scott Cross to bring those Troy Trojans into our arenas for next year?
I think UT Arlington's just happy to be leaving the league, so they don't have Scott Cross to come and just whip them.
Speaking of UT Arlington, Tibbs, not a very good performance from UT Arlington in the women's Sun Belt or in the NCAA game. Am I correct?
That is correct. They took a huge L and can keep on carrying the L out of the Sun Belt.
Do we care? No, we care about the Sun Belt, of course, and we care about women's basketball, of course. But did it really hurt us to see UTA lose?
I don't think so, because I think the bigger story, honestly, was in the WNIT anyway, where Troy was hosting the big P5 of Alabama. Still didn't get the win, but we're right there at the end and definitely covered the spread. Think the final score was that they fell by 2, maybe 1 point at the end. But that to me is still the bigger story, that we had the SEC coming into the Sun Belt for a postseason game.
Yeah, and they had to play their, what they would probably call their little sister in a derogatory way, and then almost get beat. So I wouldn't imagine Alabama inviting Troy to play in Tuscaloosa. Where's Alabama? Is it Tuscaloosa?
It is.
Okay. I suddenly had a brain freeze. I don't think we're going to see the Troy Trojans invited to play there anytime soon. If I know my history, I know P5 teams do not like it when they almost get defeated by their so-called little brothers and sisters in state. So,
well, as we know, man. I mean, we all have went to school that have the larger Power Fives. That may be our only opportunity potentially for at least a little while, because as we know from the football side of things, you schedule these things way out. In women's basketball, they're scheduled every year in a lot of cases. You may have a home and home potentially, but you're going to have that one shot at the in-state team. And that it kind of slips through your hands there, and it's pretty tough to digest. But I mean, yeah, it's obviously huge to have it on your home floor, to have those high major / Power 5 teams in your building and nearly take care of business. It definitely can be frustrating.
So before we move on to Bill Connolly and his amazing algorithms and analysis and spreadsheets that he puts together, I'd like to know from both of you, what do you think? How does the future of the Sun Belt basketball look right now to you? Do you feel like it's on solid footing, especially with these new guys coming in? Or do you feel like we're still sort of in the mud right now, just spinning our wheels?
I'll jump in. I am a little concerned with the 4 that are coming, just because they did not obviously have a good season this year. I will say Old Dominion has traditionally been very good, especially in men's basketball and women's basketball. Obviously, James Madison has a very good women's program. Their men's program features former Georgia Southern coach Mark Byington, so that'll be fun. That'll be another storyline where he left Statesboro for James Madison to go back to his home state of Virginia. So it's going to be interesting. Marshall has been okay in men's basketball, but I don't think it raises the level in terms of, I think, the totality of the league. I do think it's a step forward for these schools, because I think from the top of the Sun Belt to the top of Conference USA, it's been comparable. When you had Middle Tennessee State ripping through the league for such a while, but I think it's going to be interesting. You're going to see new names. You're going to see new blood. You're going to see new recruiting avenues. I think some of these schools we're going to try to recruit in different areas. Go into Louisiana and try to recruit into some some angles of Georgia, South Carolina, where they may not have been able to, but now that they're Sun Belt school, they're able to kind of be more of an attractive option.
Slight step back, in my opinion, because as much as we gave the grief of Little Rock and UTA, they were good teams year in, year out. They were in the upper half of the league, and that's going out the window for teams that have struggled against a non-good basketball competition in Conference USA. And so I think that we're actually taking a step back. I think in the grand scheme, we'll be better, but definitely next year it's going to be kind of ugly.
And I will say this about where we are as a basketball conference is that, we talked about the Panthers. They had that pretty good showing against Gonzaga. We talked about Texas State having a fun, if disappointing, showing in the NIT. However, I feel like the Sun Belt still has a long way to gain when it comes to respect. I mean, for the Panthers to get a 16th seed is just, I understood it because the Panthers started off so slow. But it also felt like maybe nobody was paying attention enough to the Sun Belt. And partly it's our fault. We shoot ourselves in the foot. We start off with bad out-of-conference losses, or we don't perform at a level that we should. And as a result, our schedules are always kind of lame, or at least I know that at Arkansas State, they're kind of lame. So it's just a hard struggle to get that sort of notoriety that we need. And we need to start closing escrow on some of those early season games. So I feel like there's a lot of great stars in the Sun Belt right now. I feel like there's a lot of great potential. I just hope we capitalize on that for 2022-23.
Well, and I'll add one point to that, Jeremy. I think it almost has to come from the commissioner's office and even the ADs. If you don't want to continue to be a 16 seed and have almost no shot to win, or even a 15 seed, you're going to have to talk to your programs about limiting or eliminating the non-Division I games. I'll speak specifically for Georgia State. They played 3 non-Division I games this season. They also had 5 games canceled because of COVID. So essentially 8 games are taking away from even a quality loss, if that is a thing, which it is in the net rankings. If you're going on the road and you're winning a game, you get points, basically bonus points. Or if you lose by less than 10 on the road, it's almost like a quality loss. So having those 2 or 3 or however many non-Division I games, it really kills you, because when you're going up against other mid-majors, and believe me, Sunday night, I think the selection started at 6. By 6:15, I probably had 80 messages, whether it was on Twitter and this. I can't believe Georgia State's a 16 seed. And I said, I can, because you fill out the rest of the bracket. And if you look at the net rankings of programs like Cal State, Fullerton, and go up and down the list, they were 30, 40, or even 50 rating points higher in the net, and they had stronger strength of schedule. It wasn't that their schedule was so impressive. It just was they've actually played Division I games. So it's one of those scenarios where the coaches, and they absolutely are worthy to do it, they want scheduled wins. I get that. But at the same point is, if you got to a point and you said, okay, Arkansas State, ULM, all the newbies, you can only play 1 non-Division I game. You've got to go out and schedule. I know it's a difficult task. It really is in some of these cases, but you have to go do it. Now, does that mean go play, 5, 6 high majors a year? No, because we know, you don't want to get your head beat in either. But at the same point, I believe it's one of those scenarios where that's kind of how it has to rise. And I think, former Commissioner Carl Benson talked about that a little bit. Look, you got to spend the money. You got to invest it. I can tell you, because I've done a deep dive on it. Georgia State spends about $3 million annually on men's basketball. I know that is probably toward the top of the league, and it's why you're seeing the results that you're getting. I mean, they basically dominated the league with over 101 wins in the last, 7 years.
How much of that, though, do you think is a schedule of convenience? Because the footprint of where we all are, it's a lot easier to schedule that non-D1, that D2, the D3s, NAIAs, whatever. Because I look even around Louisiana, South Arkansas has all of these schools that are right there. And it's, from a business standpoint, how is it cost justified to say I got to travel all the way to McNeese when I have another school that is 30 minutes away?
Mm-hmm.
And that you can probably pay $5,000 or $6,000 to. I mean, that's the economics of it. You know, a lot of these contracts obviously aren't made public like the football ones are, and they're not $1 million. But when you go and play a high major, you're going to get, 60, 70K in most cases when you play them. Well, a lot of times, and we've seen it in the state of Georgia, the quality basketball in this state has continued to completely disintegrate with Georgia Tech and Georgia. But you have quality programs like Mercer. It has been in the NCAA tournament, beat Duke a few years ago. And also Kennesaw State, which, has been around. It hasn't really been good, but they don't want to play unless they get paid. So I get it from all sides, I think, but that there has to be kind of some semblance of a middle ground. If don't allow a third, then maybe do two, because like I pulled up the net rankings. Texas State is still the highest net today in the final net rankings. They were at 129. That probably would have got you a 15 seed looking at the teams that were, behind them. They were basically ahead of Delaware, which was in the field. You're looking, I mean, South Alabama, I think, was second. Jacksonville State, for example, was a 15 seed. They played Auburn this weekend in the opening round. I think that's where you're going to have to see it. You're going to need multiple teams that push that 150 ceiling. And could we see it next year? Possibly. But I think it just has to be an overall effort, and it has to be an emphasis. And that really comes down to money and resources and, continuing to keep good coaches and recruit.
So we shift gears to college football, where the returning production came out. Tops in all of college football, Bowling Green at 92%, followed closely by Brigham Young at 88%. The worst, Nevada, 28%.
Dang, Nevada.
But as we start to shift gears and look at this from a Sunbelt perspective, Southern Miss is number 6 at 85%. The first question I have, though, they have a lot coming back, obviously, as this number even indicates. But is that a good thing or a bad thing, knowing that they struggled last year and even the year before that, the COVID season?
I remember you and I kind of talked a little bit offline about this even last week. And I remember ULM was in a similar position a few years ago. I think it was ULM, where they were bringing back a lot of guys. And they're like tops in the Sun Belt. But they had also only won like 2 or 3 games last year. And you kind of had to think to yourself, well, is that a plus? Is that a boon? Are you really getting back top quality players? But I will tell you this, Tibbs, and this is more of my opinion than anything. Anytime you bring back experience, it's good. Now, you may not be bringing back the best players, but you're bringing back leadership. And I think that's pretty good. And I think when Southern Miss fields that team, and you don't have to explain new systems to a bunch of new people, and you got a bunch of guys that you can count on, and maybe they've had another off season in the weight room, and maybe they're just a little bit better than they were the year before. I think what you have is a pretty good team. So I actually believe in Bill Connolly's system here, or at least, I guess there's no reason not to believe in the rankings, but I actually believe it's important to have that experience come back.
Interesting that Georgia Southern and Troy both at 80%. I see those at complete opposite spectrums, at least for this upcoming season. I think Troy will finally kind of have things together under the new coaching staff and kind of get that boost that you usually see with the new staff coming in. Georgia Southern, I just don't think that they have the personnel to compete yet.
What's surprising about Georgia Southern is that usually when you get a new coaching change, you see kind of a lot of people moving on. You know, a lot of people seeing they don't have a role anymore in the new coaching scheme. Yeah, you'll see a lot of new guys being brought in and people getting replaced. I can't figure out what's going on with Georgia Southern. I think we're all in agreement. Are they still a triple option team? Is Clay Helton going to bring in more of his offense to the mix? Is it sort of going to be a composite of what he has to work with plus some new guys he brings in? Georgia Southern to me is the biggest, apart from the new guys coming in. Georgia Southern to me is still the biggest mystery in all of the Sun Belt.
They signed multiple quarterbacks. I mean, we talked about that, certainly after signing day. They also have had a transfer from Buffalo, who from folks that I've talked to down there is probably going to be the starter there, just because he actually has experience. You don't want to throw a true freshman out into the mighty Sun Belt East, the gauntlet that it is right now. Here, kid, get you some. So they are trying to increase the talent level, which truly was the problem the last few years. The issue ultimately under Lunsford is recruiting had dropped on the lines. You had 2 NFL defensive backs, which is a rarity, obviously in the Sun Belt level in the same backfield. Both of those guys were not replaced, and you saw defensively them continue to kind of take steps back in the secondary and in the front seven. And ultimately, when you're trying to run an option offense and your offensive line isn't very good, and your quarterback play isn't very good, you're in trouble. And I'm very interested to see how the change goes. They've also hammered, tried to go get some skill guys at running back, at wide receiver, because legitimately they didn't have guys that can run more than 1 or 2 routes. So now you have to almost go really back to the basics there and build it. And as I've continued to caution people in this state, it's going to be a long build. And I will tell you, I can circle, Connolly's returning production. Georgia State returns a truckload. They should have 18 starters back from the bowl win. So they're on the opposite end, and they're ready to rock and roll. I know the spring game is under 2 weeks for the Panthers.
Speaking of having more guys come back like Georgia State, who is having nobody come back, Tibbs?
It feels like Coastal. Coastal, it seems like they have Grayson McCall coming back, but with the shoulder surgery, he's not participating in spring ball. So having lost Hiley and Likely, they are definitely the big question mark coming in.
Yeah, and see, they were that team, remember, that they had a whole bunch of freshmen and sophomores, and they redshirted all those guys and patiently waited for them to grow and develop. Then, bam, suddenly Coastal Carolina was good. Now are we saying where Coastal Carolina, bam, can suddenly not be so good? I think maybe.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see, because the assumption is always that Coastal Carolina is good. They have all these top classes. They should be just dominating, knocking the doors down for recruits. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I think this is where we kind of see, is the success parlaying and getting them kids to continue that success going forward.
And their schedule, as we talked about, gets significantly harder. They host Army. They've got to play Buffalo at home as well as a quality MAC team. You're looking up and down. I mean, obviously the newbies there in the Sun Belt East. And then they have to go to Virginia is their Power 5 game. We know they had a very solid season as well. So it's not going out to Kansas or hosting Kansas, probably the worst Power 5 team in back-to-back seasons. The thing, it gets a whole lot harder, and you have kids that have not been in that scenario. And again, I still wonder. They estimate Grayson to be back, but if you have shoulder surgery on your throwing arm, that can get sticky in a hurry.
I love Grayson McCall and I love Jamie Chadwell, but it does seem like he does not have the tools that he had last year and the year before coming in this year. So, they all kind of came in last year with this sort of Chanticleer moxie that was pretty hard to overcome. So we'll have to see what their stance is for this year. How about the Cajuns, Tibbs? Are the Cajuns bringing back some guys?
48% returning based on Conley's research. I think that they are the big question mark out of everyone in the league because they've lost so much, lost Napier, the coaching staff. Yes, they hired one of their own in Michael DeZormo to come in and run it. A lot of the assistants are the same, but we do not know what exactly that team is going to look like and how they're going to act with all of those changes going on.
No more Levi either, who has seemed to have been, helming those Cajuns for the last 40 years. It seems like he has been there since the 80s. Levi Lewis is gone. So you don't have the team leader on the field. You don't have the team leader on the sideline. You got a little bit of cognitive dissonance with the buyer after you hired the new coach, who was an assistant coach. Cajuns might be looking at a 6-win season.
And I think that was even if Napier would have stayed. I think regardless, they just have lost too much to continue to be atop the standings. They've got to have that 1 year to reload and get things back up and going. Without a doubt, though, they'll be back at the top. It's just a matter of how quickly can they get it done.
Oh, it's always a matter of time for them. It just might not be this year for them. But with them kind of creative a vacuum, that means that the FunBelt West, which is weaker than the East, I'll admit that, Ben Moore. That means there is a job opening as a divisional conference champion that's up for grabs in 2022 in the Sun Belt. And that should be pretty exciting for the ULMs, the Red Wolves, the South Bamas, I guess now Troy's of the world. I guess Troy would be the one that truly filled that vacuum better than anyone. So look for another just sort of Wild West scenario for the Sun Belt West, and look for the Sun Belt East just to kind of do their business as usual and just kick everybody's ass.
It's another short, sweet episode because Jeremy has to go. He's always busy. He's too big for us.
Anniversary.
Happy anniversary, brother.
Happy anniversary there.
I have been married 23 years. So yeah, it's not like one of the bigger ones, not 20th or 25th, but I have vowed. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what we're doing for the anniversary.
I don't want to hear about it.
I'm going to pick up some salad.
And no duels or two.
So yes, let's do some parting shots. Can I lead parting shots since it's my birthday? I mean, usually it's Tibbs leading parting shots.
Well, it's not your birthday, but yes, you can.
Did I say birthday? Well, I feel like I was born again when I married my wife. So that's how that works. Ben, give us a parting shot, and then maybe what do you call it? A plug.
Plug. That's the word you're looking for. Yes. I'd mentioned a little bit earlier, if the Sun Belt doesn't want to be 16 seeds anymore, then you have to improve the product. And how do you do that? You recruit better, you schedule better, you retain your coaches. I know our website, my co-owner of the website launched a program and a fundraising campaign this week called Winning 101. And essentially it was kind of on, hey, 101 is an academic side of things where, hey, that's the easy classes, right? Get you in. It's also the number of wins that Georgia State guard Kane Williams won in his career in Atlanta. So urging Panther fans to jump on board, donate $101 to the men's basketball program. We've had a great response so far in 3 days, specifically going to men's basketball, not just going to the general fund. While that matters as well, if you want the men's basketball program to improve, then give to the men's basketball program. And I encourage anyone and everyone that follows their Sunbelt school to give to their school and discuss options like that, giving to specific programs that you want to see improve.
Absolutely. Fans have to invest if fans want to see better product. Tibbs, give me a plug and maybe a parting shot.
How fitting is it that the story of this year's NCAA tournament that is in the Sweet 16 is the Peacock? When you get excited, you spread your wings, parlaying there on what Ben said. If you're excited about your team, at the end of the day, it takes money. You got to get involved. You got to find a way to support your school, support the Bobcats, support whoever, and make sure that you're advancing the league.
Absolutely. And I guess my parting shot is that we're in the middle of baseball season, and I am trying my hardest as editor, owner, primary writer of HowlRaiser.com not to write a scathing article about my Red Wolves and the state of the baseball program, but I think it's going to have to happen. So that'll probably be up next, sort of a deep dive into Red Wolves baseball, why it's floundering, what we need to do to bring it back up. And you know what, Ben? It might be like I'll be asking people from the Georgia State Panthers to donate $101 to the Red Wolves baseball team. I am taking your money and I'm turning it into a respectable baseball program.
Pass the hat, man. Listen, what they rising tides raise all ships, right?
Absolutely. All right, for myself, for Dusty Thibodeaux, for Ben Moore, this is the FunBelt Podcast signing off. Join us next week when I'm sure we'll have incredible guests